Mental Health Mondays ignite the spark. Hope guides each step, even in the dark. New week, new dreams to see. Hope's the key to what's meant to be.
Hey everybody, welcome to Mental Health Mondays with Hope. I'm Hope, and I hope you have a great upcoming week in this cold weather we're having here in Northeast Pennsylvania. This is my guest this evening, Amy Carpenter. She's in studio with me, and we're going to be talking about PTSD tonight. But we're going to start with our positive affirmation with our guest. I am
optimistic.
That's a great one. So as we get started, or before we get started, I'd like you to just tell our viewers just a little bit about yourself. Who is Amy Carpenter?
First, I'm Hope's sister.
Yep, full disclosure.
I am, and
Just a little bit about yourself. Who is Amy Carpenter?
First, I'm Hope's sister.
Okay.
I am an adventurer, and I am a mom, a wife, a teacher, and I am a curious person. And so I definitely live my life with curiosity. I'm also a veteran.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons that I'm here today.
Right. To talk about PTSD.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that, the information about yourself. Full disclosure, when I do have a family member on, I let everyone know. Amy is one of my 4 sisters that I have. And we're going to talk a little bit about PTSD as it related to her service in the military, and also some things about PTSD in general that we don't necessarily think about. I feel that this is a really important show because PTSD is out there in places that we wouldn't necessarily recognize it. So when we think about PTSD in the military, which I did have Staff Sergeant Major, right? Chief Staff Sergeant Major Claudette Williams, on here.
Command Sergeant Major.
Yeah, it's Command Sergeant Major. And I've messed up the whole thing. But, we talked a little bit about PTSD in the military and active duty and things like that. But that's not...
Normally it's related to some sort of battle situation.
Right.
Yeah, but...
What was your battle?
Mine's actually medical related PTSD.
Right.
And so mine's related to being injured in the military and then being told that you're no longer a soldier, no longer being able to be in the military, and just the outcome of being broken when you're still serving. So that's where my PTSD comes from.
Right. So, when you're in the military, some things that you've shared with me before is like, you have like a battle buddy.
Sure.
And no man left behind sort of, mentality with the military. When that all happened and you were you felt cast out because you were physically injured, did you feel that, the no man left behind or no person left behind did no longer apply to you? You're like, you were left behind.
Yes, you're right. No, I did not feel like it applied to me anymore. When it came to my chain of command. So if you're looking at your other soldiers who are on the same level as you, that's different. That esprit de corps is there. The camaraderie is there. I mean, we have the trauma bond. And so that's never going away. But having your chain of command then looking at you in a different way is definitely feels like it left you behind. You are separated before you're out of the military.
Right. And I mean, what did that really do to your psyche? Because clearly you don't join the military unless you truly have a desire.
Yeah, sure. And so I spent a couple years being in the military and not really being able to do my job fully. And so that means that You basically had the people who you learned were in charge of you, the people you looked to, almost like parents in a way, telling you that you were less than, just less than. And so it definitely affects you mentally, and it stays with you. So that's the kind of trauma that you can have, just related to not being, just not being all that you can be, I guess.
Right,
I don't mean to use that
Big
term,
cliche.
you know, but yeah, so I mean, you are taught a chain of command, and these are the people that you're taught to not question. And so when they're telling you that you can't do things, you don't question it.
Right.
And so it has a huge effect on your psyche.
Right. Do you feel that if something would have happened and we would have had to go to war, would they have deployed you?
Yes,
They would have deployed you.
I'm sure.
And do you feel that because of how you were being made to feel lesser than, do you feel that you would have retained your confidence?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. There's no question. I would have still followed orders because that's how I was taught. And I was one that they said questioned too much, and that it wasn't necessarily where I was supposed to be. But even with that, with questioning, and I was still within the constraints of the ranking system.
Right.
And so there's now when I look at it, of course, I think I would have questions, but no, I would not have.
Right. Okay. So with your injury in the military, you were diagnosed differently than what your injury was.
Yes.
And you continued with your service with that injury, with the injury itself being much more severe than what you were diagnosed with.
Yes, I had a broken vertebrae and I was diagnosed with a pulled muscle.
Right.
For 3 years,
Yes.
almost 3 years. And so that means that every time that the doctor said that I was eligible to go back out and, just be out and be a soldier, then I did. And so I re-broke my vertebrae several times.
Right.
Yeah.
Were you in constant pain?
Yes.
But you did everything you were supposed to do
Yeah, absolutely.
in constant pain.
Absolutely.
What does chronic pain do to us mentally and emotionally?
Chronic pain just wears you down. So absolutely. I mean, it gives you anxiety. It gives you other medical issues. Anyone who lives with chronic pain understands.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, as a soldier,
Yeah.
you work through it. It's like the coach, slapping you on the back and saying, get back into the game. You're fine.
Yep. Lace your boots up tighter and keep going.
Right.
Yep.
So that is in itself can be wearing. What do you feel, if you don't mind, was the most traumatic, because you have PTSD? So explain how that presents itself now.
Oh, now I've gone through a lot of therapy, but how it presents the most now is, since I have medical related PTSD, I learned that I cannot trust medical professionals. And so as I go through any type of appointment for even normal things, I get severe anxiety. And so my heart rate goes up, and it's kind of difficult to go into regular appointments.
Right.
And so I've learned through therapy to become an advocate for myself, but it took a lot of time.
Sure. Now, some people might say, well, yeah, I always get anxious when I go into the doctor too. And my blood pressure is a little higher when I go in, and they'll take it, once I've calmed down a little bit. So
Sure.
What do you say to people that say that, what's the big deal?
Figure out why you have anxiety and don't just blow it off.
Right.
That would be my reason.
Good.
So, or my thing,
Response.
my advice. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So basically what caused your trauma, was distrust in the medical professionals who,
Sure.
because of the misdiagnosis.
Mhm.
And what about,
So there's two parts. There's
Okay.
one, my chain of command telling me that I'm unworthy to wear the uniform. And then on the medical side, every doctor or every professional I went to built on the original diagnosis. And so I never went back in and got reassessed. So it just continued to get worse, which means that I went to, eventually going to cardiology for anxiety, going to mental health because I struggled with the fact that I could not keep going on.
right,
And so it just built and built. And unfortunately, from a very easy mistake
sure.
that happened in the beginning.
Right. Now, I want to add that you are in no way, shape, or form disrespecting the
No,
military.
Not at all.
You are a proud veteran.
I am.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, we don't want this to sound like, we're being disrespectful
No.
to the military. Again, being my sister, I know that she is a very
Yeah.
proud veteran and would continue,
Mhm.
To be serving our country in that capacity if she
I
were
would
able.
have. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Right.
I would have stayed in.
So, how long is it since you're out of the military?
A long time. It's been a very long time. 25 years. 20
Okay.
years.
Okay. She
Something
doesn't
like
look a day over 30, right? Just
That's
like me. She's
Yeah.
my baby sister by 1 year. She's 30, I'm 31.
Yeah. Yep, that's right.
That's
and my kids are 27, 28.
right. That's our story, and we're sticking to
That's
it, right? So it's 22 years? How many
Something
years?
like that.
Okay.
I have to
So
think
over
about
20
it.
years.
Yes.
Yeah. And how do you feel now?
As far as
PTSD.
I mean, I still have PTSD. I still deal with it. And like I said, I've gone through therapy, and that's been more recent in the past, say, 5 years that I've gone through therapy to deal with
Okay.
it. And so I spent a lot of time not going to the doctor because I just couldn't.
Right.
I didn't want to do that. And even if I did, I didn't trust what they said. So I, of course, went to Dr. Google for everything.
Dr. Google.
And I still do that to a point.
Right.
But yeah, it still affects me definitely. But now I tell my doctors about it, I advocate, and they all know when I go in, if I'm struggling and starting to have a panic attack,
Right.
then, that I need to go somewhere and I need to just let it play out.
Right.
Mhm.
Now, I know, again, I've talked to, other veterans on the show, and we've talked about the PTSD that comes from, combat or a traumatic, situation. I know someone who was in the military with someone who, wanted to go AWOL, and then, the way they eventually went AWOL was driving their vehicle into a wall and killing themselves.
Yeah.
So obviously the person that did that, was having a very difficult time, but that was very
Mhm.
traumatic for, for the people, and especially for the battle buddy.
Yeah.
You had stated earlier that you have a trauma bond,
Mm.
So talk about that a little bit, because, again, as we think of military, like PTSD is something that has been coming out, recently over the last few years as something that's more common and more than just our combat veterans, and more than just, people who had been sexually assaulted, raped, in abusive relationships. That PTSD, it comes from a variety of reasons. And we want people to understand that what they're experiencing, could be PTSD, and it's not one of these typical things that we talk about.
Absolutely.
Or that we assume, the stereotypical PTSD. So tell me about that trauma bond, and how does that play out?
So the military people talk about the trauma bond. It goes all the way back to basic training when you first start. And I know I personally, when I went through basic training, we had all of the mental exercises that were there to make us rely on our chain of command. So military people understand this. And so it's things like going out in the middle of the night to look for a soldier who's AWOL. That actually never happened. It's psychological abuse in a way, but you do that together, and that's what makes you connected. That's what makes a fighting force that will die for each other,
Right.
and who will not question their chain of command.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, I mean, that can be pretty powerful. Now, you have said to me that you are still, in touch with people,
I am.
and you would still be there for them at the drop of a hat.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And people I haven't seen for over 20 years.
Right.
If they were in the city that I live in, then they would have a place to stay.
Right.
And it would be just like time hasn't passed.
Right.
You may catch up on your family and what's going on, but there's still that connection
Right.
that is always there.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I would have to really think about trauma bond, like terminology of that, because
Mhm.
I get it. You're bonded through trauma, but a lot of times with trauma bonding, the whole bond is traumatic. Whereas, the whole time you're bonded is traumatic. Whereas after you're out of the military or out of that situation, your bond just seems like glue.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
They've got, I'm guessing, this is my opinion, that they do a whole lot of psychological
I'm sure.
research
Right,
on
I'm sure.
how to be able to do this to people.
Right. Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely. And, psychological warfare. And I mean, we can go into a whole
Mhm.
side topic of dark psychology and how that's,
Sure.
how that's used in the military and politics and the
Mhm.
media,
Yeah.
and absolutely that's how, whoever the they is that's
Mhm.
using the dark psychology is how they weed people out.
Well, for the military, it serves a purpose.
Right.
So, even setting up your battle buddy, and
Sure.
battle buddies aren't really a big thing after you get out of school.
Right.
But,
Okay. Gotcha.
But even setting up your battle buddy, knowing that, you have to be there for them no matter what.
Right.
They make you responsible for everything for each other. It's kind of
Right.
like when
Okay,
you're
gotcha.
siblings,
Right.
and you're responsible for your sibling.
Yes.
That's what it's like.
Okay.
And so they're already starting that bond early to be able to make you responsible for your
Right.
fellow soldier. And I keep saying soldier because
Sure.
Army, but
Right.
your
Right.
other
Yes.
people.
Now, Amy, we're 7 siblings, and
Yeah.
Amy is the only of our siblings that had entered the military.
Mhm.
So, anytime she's talking about things like this, she's educating all of us. Even the family. I mean, my ex was in the military,
Sure.
but that's something that we didn't really discuss about how that affects you being in the military. And he did go overseas during Operation Desert Storm.
Yeah.
But he didn't go into battle. He more went to people who left their stations to go to battle. He
Sure.
went to replace them, in a different country.
Yeah.
But even that, for me as the spouse at the time, it was scary.
It's
a little bit scary.
That's really scary.
Right,
Absolutely.
right.
You never know. And I was very blessed because I was in the medical field. And so I was stationed in a hospital
Right.
for all of my career, actually.
Right. Where's my
And-
Marine friends out there? Where's my Marine friends?
Yeah.
Sorry, because I remember the story about you was either drawing blood or giving shots to
Oh.
Marines.
No, it just always seems like the biggest people fall the fastest.
Right, but you can't tell me you
But-
didn't enjoy watching the Marines fall. Sorry,
No,
guys.
because we had to catch them.
Oh, fair.
That
I
was
know that-
hard. They would come in and nobody wanted them because they had to worry about catching.
Oh no! I know that I
250
have
pounds.
viewers who are Marines, so
Yeah.
I'm just busting on you.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
But I was very lucky because I was in the medical field. But
right,
even so, when I was overseas, we got people from active situations.
right,
And so yeah, it is difficult, and especially when you can always be deployed. And so
Right.
if you're in a deployable unit and you can be deployed within, 3 days. And so I know that we had to go every 6 months, and we made it, it was a big thing with our unit where we would go and make sure our will was up to date.
Wow.
and,
Okay.
and all of those things. So it was always present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, that's very stressful. And, and I know one of the things that I've talked about with the sergeant major, and then also my friend who's the head of the VA here in Monroe County, Pennsylvania, is integration for military members back into society, civilian society. And, when we talk like so much like lately about, Pennsylvania, which is where we record from. Amy, however, is a Californian now.
At the moment. Yeah.
Not liking this 20-degree weather we're having in
No.
NEPA.
Not used to it.
But I lost my train of thought because I'm sorry. I was thinking about the skiers behind us. I know there's not really skiers. There's not really skiers behind us.
So
Sorry.
reintegrating
Yes.
veterans into society.
Yeah.
I know it's very difficult. I've actually known quite a few people who have gotten out after just a few years, and then they have such a difficult time that they end up going back in.
Right.
Not every branch will let you reenlist like that, but the Army does.
Right.
Mm.
Right. And that's something that I know that, that both, that the sergeant major and also, the head of the VA here in Monroe County, and also other, leaders of veteran organizations, that's something that they feel is important for the military to be working on is, like integration and having a battle buddy, having a civilian buddy, like a re-entry buddy, a mentor, or what have you.
Yeah.
And, and I see that as really important, something to, to help with all the difficulties that come along, whether you were in combat or not. It's a different lifestyle being in the military.
And the VA does they have a lot of great programs out there to help with that.
Right.
And I mean, the VA has been a godsend for me.
Right.
So
And you know what? And maybe while you're
blessed.
here visiting, we can have you, talk with some of our veteran leadership here and let them know, like tell them how things are in California, because I know, of another topic that we're going to be discussing later, California, the VA out there was absolutely tremendous for you. And I'm not saying anything negative about the VA here, but, there are definitely differences depending on where you're located because of how, of how just what they experience in that area
and opportunity.
And right.
I just happen to live in a place that has, I'm close to cities.
Right.
And so we have a couple of different options that I can drive to within an hour.
Sure. But now let's jump to a different discussion pertaining to PTSD.
Sure.
So one of the things that we talked about, you're a teacher.
Yes.
And we were talking about students. Now, I was a long-term, sub in the guidance department at an urban school. And I also coached basketball there at an urban school. And, and you've coached, you've taught in, economically deprived areas.
I have.
So let's talk about what that was with PTSD with kids.
Sure. So I taught in the Harrisburg School District, and there's a lot of issues when it comes to PTSD when you're looking at kids who are living in a situation that's unstable. And, there's just a lot of uncertainty. And so I've personally seen an increase in the amount of students who have been diagnosed with PTSD when it relates to their home situation.
Right.
And so, we know that there are a lot of situations out there where there's abuse happening, and that's what we think of as maybe somebody having PTSD if a child is diagnosed with it.
Right. Like either they're being abused would be the
Yeah.
stereotype, or they're seeing a parent being abused, but it's more, it's
It
different.
is definitely.
So go
more.
ahead and-
So having that uncertainty, of course you are never going to know what's going on in someone's home,
Sure.
but I've seen, just me personally, seen an increase in the amount of students who are diagnosed with PTSD when they have a home life that is not the typical abusive situation, but it is a situation where, the family's living paycheck to paycheck and they have that uncertainty. And so it is definitely something that affects kids. And I mean, we know this. I
Right.
mean, I'm not saying this for people to feel bad. It's
Right.
just something to be aware of,
Absolutely.
that you may be at home and you are doing everything that you can for your kids, but you are struggling, and you're trying not to tell them these things, but it still comes across. They still understand.
You can
you know,
feel it.
Yeah, and they understand if your job is difficult and maybe day to day you don't know if you're going to still have a job.
Right.
They know that. And even though you have food on the table, you're doing all the things, but you are still struggling, and financially, or for whatever reason, place wise, maybe everyone is living in the same apartment so you can save money. They know those things.
Right.
And so it's just something to be aware of, and to see if your child is starting to take on the anxiety of running that household, even though they're a child. It's just what you can look for
Right.
in your kids.
So how would that, I mean, besides, that kind of trying to help out, be an adult,
Yeah.
how would that PTSD manifest itself?
A lot of times anxiety. It comes across in what I saw personally was a lot of fighting with kids. They're always at the ready. And so if there's any type of, friction between students, it goes, pretty quick to a physical situation, because they just have this energy,
Fight or
this
flight.
yeah, exactly. That anxiety that it's always there under the surface.
Right. Right. How does that affect schoolwork?
I mean, exactly how you would think. Students are.
Sorry, it was
are
a rhetorical
struggling.
question,
Yeah.
but I feel
Yeah.
it's one that needed to be answered.
Yeah, they're struggling. I knew that there were some times where I would walk into the classroom and something's off, and you can keep teaching, or you can try and figure out what it is.
Right.
And so if you sit down and just say what happened, you'll find out that a few kids maybe in the middle of the night heard gunshots in the apartment that they're living in, and nothing happened to them personally, but they heard something. And so now they've brought that to school.
Right.
And so maybe it's 3 or 4 out of a class of 30, but they come in and they talk to each other.
Right.
And then suddenly there's that anxiety and that fear. And so it definitely disrupts the class.
Right. Right. And we got the skier. All right. Yeah, you have snow mountains in
We do. They're
California,
about
right?
3 hours away, though.
That's all right. We'll go skiing while you're here. Yes. No.
Mhm.
I knew you were going to say that. That's too much. So, I apologize. I remember, when I was going to school for my master's in social work, there was a video that we watched about, like the difference, like with urban working with urban students, versus rural.
Sure.
One of the things that I really focused on was rural social work, community social work, because I do live in a rural community, and things look different in a rural community than they do in urban community. We have homelessness in rural communities. It looks different.
Yeah.
You're not going to find it. Like, it's there, but you're not going to see it.
Yeah.
Because they're in cars, they're in tents, they're in the woods. Whereas, urban is different. And I will find, when I find the video, I will link it. But, it talked about things that you probably learned when, you were at the school. Again, like, I wanted to specifically state that I, was a long-term sub at an urban school. And like you had said, with the gunshots, and, and I had kids that were stressed because of gunshots. And this video would teach kids what to do if they heard gunfire. And that's not something that if I hear gunfire, it's a hunter.
Wow.
Can gunfire happen in my, my rural community? Of course it can. But, typically if I hear gunfire, it's somebody hunting. It's somebody hunting. It's not somebody being shot at.
Yeah.
But those things, like for me, were very difficult initially to fathom,
Yeah.
that these children, kindergarten,
Mhm.
are dealing with this. Kindergarten kids coming to school crying because either, both of these were real. So I'm not stereotyping, that daddy was either going to jail, or another one was
Yeah.
that daddy was coming home from jail,
Or older siblings.
or older siblings, and so when we look at our kids, our youth today, and we think of the bad kids, maybe when we were old, when we were younger, bad kids a lot of times were maybe kids that had undiagnosed learning
That's
disabilities,
true.
or ADHD and what have
Yeah,
you.
sure.
Now we look at bad kids, it's a stereotype, and we're not recognizing where that comes from.
Yeah.
Did you have a meal? Maybe the school
Yeah.
lunch is the only meal you're going to have that day.
Yeah, we were pretty lucky out in Harrisburg because a lot of their schools served 3 meals a day.
Right. And that's
Mhm.
excellent. And we have,
Yeah.
we have the powers that be fighting that constantly, and it's ridiculous. We need to feed
That
people.
is so important because
Right.
you're including dinner, because the parents are relying on that.
Right.
So
Right.
it's
So,
super important.
we
out there.
talk about PTSD. Again, we thought, there's the stereotype of PTSD, and then there's the medical, PTSD. And I'm certain, like I have another guest that I'll be bringing on at some point in time, who has gone through some very traumatic medical things, who also, I would say would be a diagnosis of PTSD, because of, being misdiagnosed for so many times, and for the medical community not listening to her, even though she was advocating for herself. And, it's something that we all, and especially, I don't know, guys, guys are quiet. We have our wonderful producer, Kendall, is here. Guys, they're tough, and they stick
Hopefully
it.
they
Yeah.
advocate,
But
but
they don't a lot of
it
times.
down.
They push it down.
Yeah.
And all of us need to advocate for ourselves medically, and take that power back.
Yeah.
So there's something that you and I had talked about with PTSD, of being proactive after a traumatic event happens. How can we lessen or decrease the potential for PTSD, or the level of PTSD?
So I actually saw a study after that was based on people after 9/11, and it had to do with kids that saw what happened, and they found that if you were able to do something proactive after a traumatic event happens, you're less likely to have the post-traumatic stress.
Right.
And so for them at the time, it was looking for people, it was cleaning up, it was taking water to firefighters. I mean, it was doing something active. Then those kids were way less likely to have PTSD.
Right.
Where others who saw it and then they had to, be sheltered inside or stay inside, and they just had to watch and wait, were more likely to have PTSD,
Right.
even though they weren't involved in the actual event.
Sure. And as a social worker, as I've done bereavement and grief counseling, and I've done crisis counseling, and one of the things that I try to do with people, which I feel is very similar, is have them replace a bad memory or an image that pops into their mind with something different, and a positive one. And it's just constantly like the reiteration of that, that positive memory, when somebody is grieving and they're very, very sad because they lost someone, and, they keep thinking of the death, and I have them try to replace that with a positive memory. And it does help, and it takes time, but this sounds very similar.
Yeah.
Because when I think of, okay, it was 9/11, and if you saw bodies falling, that's going to be the memory that stays in your mind. But if you gave water to the firefighter that was soot covered, and maybe you helped wipe their visor so they could see that, that's a positive memory that is replacing all that.
And it's happening
ones.
right away.
Right. And it's
And so
happening right
that's
away.
the big thing. So you can go and, do therapy afterwards, and it'll take, my own personal opinion is maybe more time
Right.
than if you're replacing those memories, because they've already cemented in your brain.
Absolutely.
And so versus if it happened right away, that's
Right.
true.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if someone's crime happens, going to report it may be something you could do.
Absolutely.
And you're
And because
taking
it's
action.
taking, and, in a situation where we're talking about that, like
Yeah.
if it's a crime committed against you, no matter what it is,
Mhm.
you feel like you've lost power.
Yeah, or going to take a martial arts class
Right,
afterwards, or
right.
something like that can make you feel like you are able to get that power back.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. This has been a great discussion. And we're going to actually wrap it up. We're going to hit those slopes and go skiing.
Mhm.
I'm just kidding. But so, he wants to keep going. Okay. I thought he gave me the 5 minute. I thought he gave me the 5 minute symbol. We can keep
Mhm.
going then.
Sounds great.
He wants to take his union break.
Oh,
No, I'm
yeah.
just kidding. He's hitting the slopes himself. All right. Well, then let's get back. Let's get back into it. I think that we've really, really talked to. Is there anything that you can think of that maybe I missed that that you would like to talk about as it relates to either your PTSD,
Mhm.
PTSD in general? Am I missing anything?
The only thing I can think of is, and I can't say it enough, is going to talk to someone about it. I mean, I say therapy, but it could be someone else. So keeping it inside is a very difficult thing.
Right.
And that's something that the military is, I believe, taught to do, is to just put it in a box and keep it so that you can continue on. And that's the part that makes it very difficult
Right.
for people. And it, like me, makes you keep it for years.
Right.
And not want to go to the doctor.
Right. But sometimes that lid just kind of starts to pop off on its
It
own
does.
because that box is so full.
Mm. It happens with everything.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about your, fight, flight, or freeze.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
a lot of people with PTSD are in a freeze
Right.
response.
Right.
So everything in their life becomes a little bit dulled, and they just have that. Yeah, I don't know how else to describe
Sure.
it. But they
No,
have
I mean,
that
that's-
freeze response.
Right. Because,
Mhm.
you're kind of like seeing all around you and you
Yeah.
don't feel that you have a direction that you can go.
Yep, they don't want to do anything. Nothing feels right.
Mhm,
So if you're having something like that, it could be a deeper issue related to something that's happened in your past.
Right. Now, I know that you utilize, VA medical services. And you've been out a while, but since you utilize the services, do you still stay on top of changes in the military news and what have you?
Not really.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask if you feel that if you feel that there's any sort of changes within the military on how they view mental health, on how they view the actions that they do cause. Like for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, and so what the actions that they do, the reactions that it causes within, the soldier. You feel that have you seen any changes in that?
I'm not sure, because I've been so far removed from it. And I've even gotten out of the habit of using acronyms when I talk to other military people. And so that's pretty far removed.
Right.
But no, the only thing I really know is that the VA has been asking way more questions related to mental health when you go in for regular appointments.
Okay.
And I think that is coming from changes that are in the actual military, and talking about things like, sexual abuse in women or PTSD and those types of things. And so now it's just more out there in the public information. And so it may be because they're actually coming up with some changes.
Protocols.
Mm.
But I know that they even ask that, when you go just to the regular doctor, not a military doctor, but they've been doing that for a while.
Okay.
So
yeah, I've been going to the VA for a while.
And is it just catching up with the VA?
I'm not sure. It's been there for a while. The thing that really that I noticed is that they tend to ask if women were sexually abused while they were in the military.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we have really run the gamut here with PTSD. And thank you. Thank you for flying all the way out from California just to be on my podcast.
Absolutely. That's why I'm here.
I know that I didn't say it earlier, but please, if you can like like this podcast and subscribe, click the subscribe button, subscribe to the PA Empowerment Network. It is free. It does not cost you a dime. And share it with all your friends, because the more people that are subscribers and see our new content that comes up, the more people that we can help with the different topics that we discuss on our digital radio network every week. So thank you once again for watching. This is Mental Health Mondays with Hope and Amy. I'm Hope. I hope you have a great week. We'll see you next Monday.